Arlington County Board of Equalization hearing. All 5 board members are present, and there are 6 cases on the agenda. The first case is RPC 34027-572 on Richmond Highway. And Mr. Gomez, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you. So the subject property here today is the Clark. It is a 342 unit high rise, originally built in 2017, which also offers 4,913 square feet of retail space. Our main points of contention here today kind of consist around the apartment rent being overstated. We have received a revised worksheet from the county and appreciate the county taking a second look at these, but we feel that it's still worth a discussion to try to bring these numbers to a little bit more to capture a little bit better what is actually going on and what is actually achievable at the property. So our apartment PGI of 10,260,600 is just above what was achieved at the property in calendar year 2024, and we've just made minor adjustments to the rents there. The original county worksheet is overestimating this amount at 10.76 million, and the revised worksheet is also just above that at 11.2 million. So we felt that while we do appreciate the county taking a second look, we feel that our number was very much so adequate from the jump. Our next point of contention would be the retail rent. We have provided the retail rent roll, I believe, on page 59 of our submission, which demonstrates a retail per square footage rent of $21. And the county original had a $40 per square foot rent, which they have adjusted in their revised approach to $25 per square foot. Again, we do appreciate them taking a second look. This brings the county PGI to 122.8 thousand, whereas the actual PGI is at about approximately 102.7 thousand, and that is what we utilize in our retail approach. We felt that while the expenses were a point of contention in our initial in the initial county worksheet, the revised worksheet does a great job capturing that. And we do appreciate that they took a second look, so we're all good on the expenses side. As far as the NOI goes, our NOI comes about to 7,765,000. The actual calendar year 2024 NOI with the per the actual I&E submission was 7,739,361. So we're just right above that. The initial county approach was a bit high. It was at about 8,077,916, and the revised is at 7,998,000. This still falls about 259K above the NOI that was actually achieved in calendar year 2024, while the original combined NOI was about 338K higher than this actual NOI. The adjustments that the county has made were, come a little bit closer to what was actually achieved. So we felt that a lot of their adjustments were very solid. But again, we wanted to bring up the point of contention of the cap rate per the surveys and investor surveys, market surveys, but while also iterating that the above the line issues were still very relevant in this case, and that is how we come to our total apartment value of $118,153,000 and the commercial value of $1,432,000 for a combined opinion of value of $119,585. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chicas for the county, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, board members. Good morning, Mr. Gomez. Looking primarily upon the summary sheet, as the board is familiar with the department's procedures and looking at the 4-year history. Again, this is not too uncommon with what we've seen a fair amount of other properties in the county, success year over year. In looking at the 4-year history, obviously, we do recommend the board focus upon columns F1, F2, and F3, those being the revision columns. This information obviously was taken into account after receiving the year 2024 I&E, which comes with the application sometime in April or May of this year. As we can see when looking years 21 through 2024, we saw apartment rent growth of approximately 4.3% in 2023, 4.4% 2024. The department's recommendation, again, is for a fairly modest 3.2% increase year over year, over 1% less than what was achieved just last year. We moved down to gross potential, again, growth of almost 3.7%, 3.8% in 2022, 5.4% in 23, another 4.6% in 24. Again, the county's projection is a full almost 1.5 points below that, at again, a modest 3.2% growth projected year over year. Same thing with effective gross, 26% increase in 2022, 6.3% in 23, another just shy of 6% in 24, with again the county's projection half of that at 3% growth for 2025. We've actually increased our projections for OPEX 2.5% over what was achieved in 2024. Well above even what the owner and appellant believe the OPEX should be. That continues on into NOI, 35% growth in 2022, 8.5% in 2023, and another 7% in 2024. We're at extremely modest, less than half of that growth at 3.4% anticipated growth in 2024. Extremely well stabilized building as far as occupancy. Again, reported, I believe, 97% for January 1. There's no inclination whatsoever that this growth would continue. The rents as strong as they are. And we'll leave you with the idea that year over year, we're calling for a growth of 3.8% from 2024's assessment to 2025, which again is keeping in line with what's going on with the marketplace, as opposed to the owner's recommendation for a negative 9% drop in value year over year, after achieving 7% NOI growth year over year. All these things being said, we do believe the county's revision should be confirmed at a value of $136,429,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? No?
No.
Mr. Hoffman?
Chris, is this is a non-metro cap rate, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, it looked a little higher than the other ones. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Cheekins, if we take a minute then to wrap up.
Yes, ma'am. Just again, looking at the historical summary sheets, we can see growth 3 years in a row. While the county is again projecting that growth to continue, it's at some levels 1 to 2 to 3, sometimes as much as 50% less than what's actually being achieved at the property. When we look at the growth levels, there's nothing that would constrain that from happening again, considering the occupancy in place and the well amenitized building itself. We do believe the county's revision at a 3.8% increase should be confirmed, as opposed to, again, the negative 9% drop in value year over year. We ask the board to confirm $136,429,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gomez, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yep, thank you. Again, we do appreciate the county taking another look at this case, but just want to reiterate that 259K in NOI above what was actually achieved in 2024. I feel like that is much higher. We're looking at calendar year 2024. We're not looking for a 3-year average here. We're looking at the best year that the property has achieved in the 3-year trailing, and that is essentially what we're trying to match here with our adjustments. When we cap out the 259K NOI difference, it creates a $4.4 million difference as far as, when we cap that out at the county's cap rate or OAR, we're looking at a $4.4 million discrepancy in value, which would put us at somewhere around that $133 million range, which would still represent an increase from last year. And that's without even considering our cap rate argument here. So we feel that is that our adjustments bring us a lot closer to what was actually attained at the property for its best year in the 3-year trailing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Where is everybody? Mr. Penaranda.
I'm okay with the revised assessment. I think the numbers that Mr. Chick has used are very reasonable. And, considering what the income and expenses statement that they provide, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the advice.
All right, Mr. Hoffman? Mr.
No,
Yates?
I agree. Jose.
I agree. The county's revision's fine. I totally agree with all the numbers that they compared and the percentages. I did the same thing.
All right, the only thing I did, I increased the expenses to 16% on the retail, but it made, I mean, a very, very insignificant decrease, but, okay. All right, would somebody like to make a motion then?
Sure, I'll move that we confirm the revised assessment of 136,429,900.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, second by Mr. Mendez, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none, okay. The revised assessment, excuse me, of 136,429,900 has been confirmed. Thank you both.
Excuse me, just a quick question. So that was the revised assessment, okay, I see it. My bad. I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry. Just want to make sure.
Okay, so we have Mr. Peralta and Mr. Harmon now.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Okay, and then Mr. Gomez, there we go. Okay, so the next case on the agenda is RPC 1403050 3701 Fairfax Drive. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property, sir.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Rob, good morning. So 3701 Fairfax Drive, this is a 175,000 square foot office building. It's right there at Virginia Square at Fairfax and Nelson. It's catty corner from the Virginia Square Metro Station. Now, this property has FDIC leases 171,000 square feet of that building. It's 175,000 square foot total building. The FDIC leases all of the office space there, 171,000 square feet. This amounts to 97.5% of the total NLA is occupied by the FDIC. The remainder of the space is 2 retail tenants on the ground floor. Now, the issue on this property is that FDIC lease. So again, FDIC leases 171,000 square feet of the 175,000 total square feet. If you'd be so kind as to direct your attention to our grounds for appeal shown on page 34 of the county's memo, you'll see that FDIC, they renewed their lease in December of last year at a lower rate. If you turn next to page 35, you'll see the First Amendment to the FDIC lease, which explains the terms of that renewal that was signed in December of last year. Essentially what happened, the FDIC lease was set to expire on March 31st of 2025. This is the second paragraph under the recital section on that lease. The FDIC amendment is an extension for 3 years. This is shown on item number 2 at the bottom of page 35. Moving to the next page, page 36 of the PDF, we see item 3 states the extension period base rent and free rent allowance. Item 3A states that beginning April 1st, 2025, when the renewal takes effect, the base rental rate will be $38 a foot. Item 3B states that FDIC is entitled to free rent for April of 2025, April of 2026, and April of 2027. So each April during the extension is free rent for the FDIC. So that means they're not going to pay rent for 1 month of each year of the extension. Next, at the bottom of page 36 and top of page 37, you'll see that the lease extension abates the tenant's obligation to pay any pass-through income in the first year of the renewal. Moving next to page 40 of the PDF, you can see the signature page with the owner signing the extension on December 3rd, 2024, and the FDIC signing the extension on December 20th, 2024. What this means is that a willing buyer, as of January 1, 2025, would be aware of this renewal in place as of the date of value. So just a brief recap of really the only issue is this FDIC lease. FDIC leases 97.5% of this property. It's essentially all FDIC. FDIC's lease was set to expire at the end of March of 2025. The FDIC and the landlord entered into a 3-year extension of the lease in December of last year. The extension is at a base rental rate of $38 a foot with 1 month of free rent each year spread throughout the lease. The extension also abates pass-through income obligations for the first year of the lease, and a potential purchaser would be aware of this lease as of the date of value. This is, the same logic that the county uses when it results in a higher assessment. They'll say, well, it was signed in the prior year. A buyer would be aware of it as of the first of the year, even if it hadn't taken effect. Same exact thing here. They did sign that extension in December of last year. It lowered the rental rate significantly. It went down to a base rental rate before concessions of $38 a foot. Previously, FDIC was paying over $49 a foot before concessions. So, it's going from $49.33 down to $38 a foot before concessions. So that is going to impact the value of the property. Being a forward-looking projection, we do need to take that into account. That's in accordance with Virginia law, which does require us to consider the leases in place at the property. So going back to our appeal on page 34 of the memo, you'll see we incorporated the lease renewal rate, including the 1 month of free rent each April of the 3 years of the lease. This is the leased office income row in the stabilized potential column. This is how we are directed to do it by Virginia law. So that's the actual lease in place as of the first of the year. Now, knowing that the tenant will pay above market rents for the first 3 months of the year based on their old expiring lease, we added that difference as a below the line addition in accordance with generally accepted appraisal practice. That's something I actually just spoke with an appraiser last week or two and asked him that specific question. And he said, yes, that's exactly how we handle excess rent. Next, on that page, we reduce the pass-through income to reflect the fact that FDIC will not pay pass-through income for the first year of their renewal. So there won't be pass-through income for 9 months of 2025. We then applied the county's 8% vacancy rate and grew the actual 2024 expenses by 3% to arrive at an NOI of $4,527,000. This NOI is based on the lease extension that again was signed and in effect in December of 2024. We then capitalized that NOI by the cap rate from the sale of the fully occupied 2017 build at 1201 Wilson to arrive at our final value. So that's the case. Pretty straightforward, pretty cut and dry. FDIC was paying $49.33 on a lease that was set to expire in March of 25. FDIC renewed effective December 2024 at a base rate of just $38 a foot with 1 month abated in each year of the renewal, which gets you to an effective rental rate of $34.83 per square foot. The renewal also abated the FDIC's pass-through obligations for the first year of the renewal. So as a result of that lease renewal at a lower rate, the property will lose about $2.5 million worth of NOI right off the top. So nothing else changes at the property, but the rent decrease in place does reduce that NOI by $2.5 million. So when you're looking historically at the property, NOI's been reported pretty healthily. That's not going to happen going forward because of this new lease extension. If we apply this to the prior years, we see NOI reported would be $4.5 million in 2024, $4.3 million in 2023, and $6.1 million in 2021. Our projection is at $4.5 million, which is in line with the historic operations had this lease been in place. So the assessment and the county's review relies on the previous lease rate of the FDIC. As you can see, the evidence that we've provided, we actually provided that renewal. That's the evidence. The burden of proof is on the appellant. That burden is a preponderance of the evidence. That's the standard. So preponderance of the evidence means, is it more likely than not? Is it more likely than not that this lease is in effect as of the date of value and any willing buyer will consider that lease? The answer is yes, and that's what we're asking the board to do. If you have any questions, I am available to help answer them. But please just, let's consider the actual lease in place for the FDIC leasing 97% of this property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peralta for the county, please.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Virginia Square, located 3701 Fairfax Drive. As the appellant mentioned, FDIC is the main tenant in this property. Looking at where this property is situated, it's well situated within the Virginia Square Metro. It is about 0.1 miles from Virginia Square Metro, 0.4 miles from Ballston Metro. Looking at the history, you see that this property was 100% occupied for the last several years. Looking further into the gross potential of the property, as you see, it's well above what the county has assessed the property at for 2025. Some 720,000 less than what is actually reported in 2024. As far as net operating income, 877,546 less than what was reported in 2024. If you look back into 2021, NOI reported at 6.4. That's another 5% less than what we're assessing the property at for 2025. I mean, 2021 was the lowest year of operating year income. So essentially, what this boils down to is this renewal of FDIC. I would like to point out that the commencement date for this new lease isn't until after the first of the year. So drawing the line in the sand, if this were a new lease coming in, how would we view this new lease? Well, it appears that the appellant is flipping script as far as we shouldn't introduce any new information prior or after the fact. When did this tenant move in? If we're treating this as a new tenant, they didn't move in until after the first of the year. They're not due to pay any pass-throughs the first of the year. They're not, maybe even not paying rent the first year, as if it was abated. Now, looking at this, essentially they want us to ignore the past 2023 I&E, whereas when in comparison with respect to equity wise, the other properties were assessed based on that 2023 I&E. And here in this case, the county underestimated what this property would achieve for 2024. And looking at, again, the totals, you'll see that the county was very conservative as with respect to that estimation. So again, the original assessment at $45 a square feet was $4.33 less than what the average of the property did achieve for the FDIC rent that was in place. Even looking at the overall history of this property, you see that there's been increases year over year from 2021 to 2024, yet this property's assessment decreased at, I believe, 8% reduction from last year's assessment. So with that, we do ask that the board confirm the original assessment at $71,848,300. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions for board members? I'll start, Mr. Peralta. So I follow everything that you're saying through the original assessment, but once you got this lease, you didn't find any reason to do a test on this?
Well, when looking at what 2024 has shown, 6.9 million compared to what the original assessment is, 6.1, that's essentially what we would test. Now, again, drawing the line in the sand, this new lease would be more beneficial for next year's assessment.
Okay. Okay, other questions? Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, what do they do in this building? Is this just general office space, or is there anything special about it? I mean, they got that whole campus next door. I'm actually shocked that they need this building.
Who are you asking,
Jordan,
Mr.?
Jordan, is this just general office space, or is there something special about the build out that requires them to have this building?
As far as I know, it's just general office, but I'm not 100% certain.
Okay. I mean, the lease rate would reflect general office to me. Doesn't seem like there's anything specialized in the building. Just the location that's good for them. That's all I had.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Mr. Peralta, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, thank you. Again, the original assessment understates the income for this property. We're assessing at $45 a square feet versus what the average is for the property, which was at $49.33 with the lease in place. And overall, when compared to what was actually reported, it's about a 8% less than what was reported for the 2024 NOI. So we do ask that the board confirm the original assessment at 71,848,300. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. I just want to draw the board's attention to the lease amendment again, beginning on page 35 of the appeal. This was signed in December of last year, signed at the beginning of December by the owner, December 20th by the government. It was in place well before the date of value. This is a legally binding contract that was in place. The market would know about it. If you're underwriting this property and doing due diligence, you're going to look at this and say, I have a 3-year extension. You're not going to capitalize as if FDIC is paying over $49 a foot, as the assessment has done. You're going to know about this lease. That lease is about a 30% reduction from what FDIC was paying. And that's just the market. You know, that's the reality of the current market. The old lease rate was based on a 2013 rental agreement that was then escalated, 12 years. So that's how you get to that rate. It reset to market. That's what's happening as these leases roll. That impacts the value of the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Where is everybody? Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, initially looking at this case here, I mean, to the county's point, the NOI is much lower than what was reported. I understand, and I do agree that the lease amendment would affect, a purchaser. It was signed at the 11th hour last year, but it still is there. But with that said, the NOI is so much lower than what was reported. I don't think we can just ignore 2024 just because there was a lease addendum. So that, and it is a 97% occupied, or actually even 100% occupied, I believe, building, and they're still using the 8% vacancy. So I think I'm okay with it. The value's down to where it was around 2018 or so. So it has dropped pretty dramatically from year over year, and the NOI is up. So I'm okay with it. Fair assessment.
All right, other folks? Mr. Hoffman?
I tried to do the test column that we never got based on the new lease. And I came up with a NOI of 4,945,975. And I actually increased the retail a little bit because the appellant has the actual numbers in there. So I use the actual retail income, which is a little bit higher than the county. So I guess my point is, at the $71 million valuation, 848,300. That puts this office building at a 6.8 cap. I'm not sure there's a buyer in this universe for that building unless they have inside knowledge that this full building tenant has, kind of an indefinite intent to renew and continue on there. But that's a very risky proposition, considering that you'd be borrowing money at 9 or 10% to try to buy this building at a 6.8 cap. It just doesn't, the logic doesn't work as far as valuation goes. So I think it should be reduced based on the actual stream of income. So when I use the $38 rent, and then I keep the actuals for the retail and the operating expenses, I ended up with that 4,945,000, which at an 8.5 cap, which is still too high, or too low rather, for this risky property. I came up with 58,157,900, which is $332 a square foot. Probably top 5% of office buildings in Arlington County. Puts it up in that 5 to 10% percentile. So I think it's fair. I'd look at this building like they're going to bail unless there's something special about it, but I can't see anything other than the location. There's other office buildings in Virginia Square they could move to.
Yeah, I did something, well, I can't say it's similar because yours is far more detailed. I feel that, as was mentioned, the burden of proof is on the appellant, and I feel like Mr. Harmon did
Yeah.
give us that information. So what I did is I took his numbers and added back the income that he took below the, or did below the line. I added it back above and capped it out at the 8.5 and got 58,963,400.
You're right. I mean, we're within
Right, I mean, it was very close.
700,000,
It's a
yeah.
little test to you, but, you know, I don't know. I think the lease does impact just because it is a lease for almost 100% of the building, and it's for 3 years. And it was signed by, you know, both sides in December. So I don't know. I know you don't agree with me, but
Well, you might be surprised. Originally, when I looked at the case, you know, you reading the first
Mhm.
pages and all that, you say, you know, Mr. Peralta just went crazy on this because he undervalued the whole thing based on the NOIs and GPIs and all that. But yeah, I mean, we can't ignore, I don't think we can ignore that the lease is actually signed. And I did a little similar, but it's the value that I come up with is very close to both of you. I did use the original assessment, but I just changed the rate to $38. And I went down the column, the whole thing with the vacancy that the county would use, and I used the same expense number. And the final value that I come up with is 58,842,200.
that's actually cleaner than mine.
Yeah. That's cleaner than mine,
I'm-
much cleaner than mine.
I'm
Right.
fine with that too. That's kind of where I was going.
Yeah, I was originally thinking that he was members that, you know, this should probably be for next year, but it's actually being signed and, you know, it's been provided that, you know, this is really what's happening.
Right, and I believe if it was the other way around and the lease was signed in December and it was at a higher rate, we'd be looking at that. So I think from a standpoint of position, it's applicable.
A buyer's going to walk in the next day and look at what the tenant's going to be paying. There's no way around that, and the county should not be ignoring that.
Okay, all right. Mr. Penaranda?
Sure, I'll go ahead and move that we reduce the assessment to 58,842,200 based on lowering the rental rate to $38 per square foot.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Huffman is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, right? Yeah. Okay, we have one opposition, Mr. Mendez. So the motion does carry. The assessment is reduced to 58,842,200 based on using $38 a square foot on the original assessment. Thank you. Okay, next case is RPC 14059-034 at 4200 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes on this property. Your microphone is muted, sir.
Oh, thank you. So 4200 Wilson, this is a 172,000 square foot office building in Ballston. The issue on appeal is pretty straightforward on this one. This property was at a stabilized occupancy over the past 2 years. Over that time, it reported an NOI of $4.2 million last year, which is in line with what it was reporting the year prior as well. The assessment assumes an increase of 12% in NOI from what it just reported last year, when it was actually between 7 and 3% vacant. So over the course of 2024, this property was stabilized occupancy, and it was reported an NOI of 4.2 million. So the question presented to us is it more likely than not that a buyer would look at this property and assume a 12% increase to NOI based on really nothing changing at the property? Just, 2024 stabilized occupancy, no changes, 12% increase. Is that accurate with what we know from this property and what's going on in the market? Well, no, a buyer's not going to grow NOI by 12%. Now, the county's test does go even further and suggest a buyer would assume a 32% increase in NOI from what the property reported last year. The county's reconstruction assumes an even larger increase to NOI year over year. So how do the county's three values that they presented get so high? And which value does the county actually believe is the accurate value for this property? So first off, the current assessment understates operating expenses by nearly $300,000 from what the property incurred in 2024 when it was fully occupied. Then, so that's the primary issue with the current assessment. The current assessment does apply a uniform discount to the rents in place to account for concessions. We've presented our concession study on page 71 and 72 of the board book that shows that that is uniform. That is what the county has done with rental rates this year. So no issues on the income, really on the assessment. It's just those expenses being understated by about $300,000 from what was reported last year. Now, the question on the test column, the county did acknowledge understating expenses and they bumped up expenses. However, they took away those concessions. So it's really, a mishmash. We'll increase expenses, acknowledge that we were too low on the assessment, but then we're going to take away the uniform concessions that we've provided on these 61 offices that we presented in the study in the board book. So the current assessment, again, just to recap, represents a 12% increase in NOI from what the property just reported when it was fully occupied. We respectfully request the board increase the operating expenses on the assessment to reflect what the property actually reported in 2024. If you do that, the resulting NOI is still a $120,000 increase over what was reported for 2024, but this is more reasonable with how the property has actually been operating. So that's the case. The assessment primarily just understates expenses. The county acknowledges that on their test. They bump expenses, but then they take away the uniform concessions that throws this property out of equalization with other offices in the county. We did present that study of 61 office properties showing that the county does consistently apply those concessions. So that's all I have available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Prouts for the county, please.
Yes, thank you. 4100 Wilson, also known as the Origin. It's located in Boston Quarter. It was built in 2018, so somewhat of a newer property with respect to the other properties in Arlington. Looking at the original assessment, you'll see at $39.25, we undershot the proposed the estimated income when comparing the leases in place, which were at $47.54. The appellant somewhat agrees where their increase or the pro forma is actually $2.18 more than the original assessment. So if there were any changes with respect to expenses, then there obviously should be change to the income as well. When looking at the historical information, you see that the property was somewhat stabilizing over the years. You'll see that the absorption over 21 to 2024 has increased dramatically, whereas right now, currently, we're at 33% vacant for the property, whereas the county is affording an 8% reduction based on the guidelines that was applied to this property. Overall, you'll see that the numbers with respect to the original 2025 assessment are understated when you factor in, again, those the vacant square footage of the property. Not only that, but when looking at our reconstructed column E versus column E1, you'll see that I indicated an increase with respect to the 2024 rent roll. If you turn your attention to page 5 of the packet, you'll see that there was 2 new leases that were signed in 2024, or I should say that started in 2024. And what the original 2024 actual income being reported states, it's missing 3 months of Skyline Renewables because they started their rent March of 2024, and then Cambium Assessment Inc. started in November of 2024. So you're missing 11 months there in rent with respect to how the 2024 INA is being reported. So that's where the change happens. That's where the reconstruction takes that into account. And that's how that the projected NOI is much higher than what was originally actually shown in 2024's INE. Overall, when looking at this property, you'll see that income increased of about 16% from last year to this year, whereas the county's assessment decreased by 6.72%. So when testing this property, we did find that because the leases in place were much higher than the original assessment, we did increase and bump up the rents to $46 a square feet. Again, comparing that to the leases in place at $47.54. We did increase the expenses to reflect $11 a square feet. I think we were a bit aggressive there, whereas they're only reporting 10.92, somewhat close to what $11 is what we're projecting. Still, after testing this property, we're still $19,131 less than was projected, given the again the rent roll in place and using the agent's estimate for the vacant square footage at $40.25. Again, we feel that the original assessment is supported, as you know, compared to the test, because the test is actually showing an increase. So we do ask that the board confirm the original assessment at $52,761,500. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? No? Okay, Mr. Peralta, if you have any final comments to wrap up in your minute?
No, just stressing again that the income increased 16% versus from last year to this year, and the county reduced the assessment by 6.72%. Again, when comparing the original rent per square feet, we're $8.29 less than what is being reported in 2024 rent roll. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. So this property was between 7% and 3% vacant throughout 2024. That means with the county's uniform vacancy rate of 8%, what it reported for 2024 is right in line with that. You don't need to do a reconstruction, gross up income, then back it back out. We have that. We have that information right there in 2024, reporting an NOI of 4.2 million, which compares with the assessment at 4.7 million. So a $500,000 increase projected by the assessment. That's a 12% increase over what the property just reported. That's largely because the assessment understates expenses. They have 1.6 million in expenses versus what was reported, 1.873. You correct that on the assessment, it brings the NOI in line with what the property actually reported. It's still an increase. It comes out to 4.446, which is 220,000 higher than what the property did in 2024 when it was at a stabilized occupancy throughout the year. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board. Where are folks?
I
Mr.
don't
Penaranda?
have any issues with the assessment the way it is. I think the numbers are lower than what the balance staff. I think this is just a cap issue more than anything else. So I'm okay with the assessment.
I agree. I don't have near the angst I had on the previous two. Anything different, gentlemen?
Yeah. Impressed with the lease up.
Yeah.
It's done well.
It's still moving down.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then I'll move to confirm the county at $52,761,500. Second.
The second,
A second by Mr. Penaranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Okay, it is unanimous. The county is confirmed at 52,761,500. Thank you. Okay, the next case, RPC 140210022. There was a request on the 6th to withdraw the case. I assume, Mr. Peralta, you have no objection?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'll move to accept the withdrawal. Do I have a second? Mr. Mendez, the second, all in favor? Aye, opposed. Okay, that case has been withdrawn. Okay, the next case on the agenda is RPC 1800710 at North Cleveland. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes and tell us about this property.
Yes, thank you. So this is 2500 Wilson. It's a 105,000 square foot office building. It's located between Clarendon and Courthouse, just past the Whole Foods. This property has been on average 58% vacant over the past 5 years. It was 52% vacant on January 1, 2025. The issues on appeal are the rental rate, the operating expenses, and the cap rate. Looking at the rental rate first, rents in place are at an average of $42.77 per square foot. The county's revision imputes rents at $42.50 a foot. This is an increase from last year's assessment at $39 a foot that was used on that assessment. The issue here is a uniformity issue. Now, I'm going to reference the concession study that we provided in the board book on page 71 and 72 as evidence of how the county considers concessions. On average, the county has applied a 9% discount to office rents on average. In this case, the county's revision is a discount of only 2%. A uniform discount, as proven by the study that we provided in the board book as evidence, results in a rental rate of $38.92 a foot. Next, the county's revision decreases operating expenses from $10.45 a foot on the initial assessment to just $10 a foot. This property's reported average operating expenses of just over $9 a foot over the past 3 years. Over that time, it was more than 50% vacant on average. So a 50% vacant building reporting $9 a foot in operating expenses. Since the assessment has grossed up income to reflect a stabilized occupancy at 72%, so too should the revision gross up expenses to reflect that 72% occupied building versus the actual 48% occupied. Extrapolating from prior year's expenses, we see that a more appropriate expense load is the $10.45 a foot used by the initial assessment. Finally, this property, again, has suffered from chronic high vacancy over the past 5 years. Over the past 5 years, average vacancy has been 58%, and it was 52% as of the date of value. Now, this high vacancy is in spite of the owner's attempts to lease up the space. Mr. Peralta and I inspected this property twice, first in 2021, again in 2023. What we observed on these inspections, we saw the owner had built out some spec suites, trying to lease up. They had improved amenities at the space, which we hear repeatedly that results in more value for the property. The county makes effective age adjustments based on these improvements, saying that it's more valuable. It's not working. They've built out spec suites. They've renovated the amenities. They have it professionally marketed for lease. Despite all that, this property hasn't been below 50% vacant since 2018. So the vacancy is a result of the poor market and the poor positioning of the property. Again, the last time it was less than 50% vacant was in 2018. So this property has struggled for at least the past 6 years, which predates the pandemic. It was only exacerbated by the pandemic. This is also in line with the market. Arlington County themselves put out a report last year stating that 51% of office space in the county is either distressed or at risk of distress, which is where this property is. So this chronic high vacancy predates the pandemic at this property, and it's in spite of all these efforts by the owner to lease it up, building out spec suites, renovating amenities, professionally marketing it. They can't get it below 50% vacant. So given the chronic high vacancy at this property, we do request the board increase the cap rate to reflect the high risk to the income stream presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peralta for the county, please.
Yes, thank you. This property, 2500 Wilson, it's in close proximity to the first 2 cases that the county heard, the board heard today. When looking at this property, we know and understand that there's a proposed redevelopment for the property, 16-story, 323 apartment building. So when looking at this property and looking at the history, the vacancy that was brought up by the appellant, we don't know that if there's a motivation there to not lease the place when there's a proposed apartment building. We do know that the first two buildings were well occupied. You saw it in the last case that they increased the occupancy in the property to almost 100% on both buildings. So there is that submarket that this property does compete against. So to see that these increases of 50% vacancy compared to those properties is kind of speaking to what I believe is the redevelopment of this property. So when looking at our original assessment, we did, however, take into consideration the high vacancy. We looked at this property year over year. In 2022, it did lease up. In 2023, it did show that there was some vacancy. And then in 2024, we did capture what exactly is being advertised as vacant in our revision. We did offer a revision for this property based on the new information. Originally, this property was being assessed at $42 a square feet. We know and understand based on the rent roll analysis that the average is $43 a square feet. And the retail is at $49 a square feet. Our original assessment was about $1 less in the office space and then about $2 less in the retail space. So again, the projection originally was understated based on what we know to be the leases in place. But then after considering the new leases, I'm sorry, there is no new leases in the last couple years. There was actually a lease in 2024 for 14,000 square feet. But then looking at how the county tested and revised the assessment, we did make an increase based on the leases in place as compared to what the appellant is stating. When breaking down what actually what the county uses, you can focus in on page 6 of 214. When the county uses a $42.50 rent on the offices in place, and then deducting the 28% vacancy, we're arriving at a $31 a square foot rent for this property, as opposed to the appellant. They're arriving at $27.71 for the leases in place, and then with respect to our vacant office, we're arriving at $26 versus the appellant's $21.26. So again, you compare that to the market and you see the effect that this vacancy, not market vacancy, in my opinion, the market, as we know, based on our guidelines, was closer to 28% versus this property has above market vacancies. But when you compare that back again to those two properties that we just heard, we know and understand that other properties are leasing up. So looking at the overall change, we did back down from our expenses from the original assessment. We overshot the expenses by about 45 cents when compared to 2023's I&E. But then looking at 2024, where the property did lease up, we saw the expenses go down at $8.39. We do feel that at stabilized, it's closer to $10. So that therefore we tested at $10 and made the reduction to about $18,499,900. And that's the value that the county is asking the board to approve. So with that, we're open for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, for the county, the appellant mentions that the property's been over 50% vacant since 2018, and you're saying that it's potentially because of the redevelopment. When did you first hear about the property potentially being redeveloped?
Well, upon review, I did find that there is a proposed apartment building being proposed.
So it was recent. It wasn't, all the way back in 2018 or even 2021.
I wouldn't know the particulars about when they decided to do so. But I know that, something, a redevelopment of this magnitude takes years to kind of develop. And
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Yates.
Robert, when you say proposed, what do you mean proposed? Do you hear it from on the street or something filed with the county or someone in the ownership?
It's listed on CoStar as a proposed. I believe, and I didn't want to introduce new information to the I guess to the case, but I could check with the county to see if there's anything
fine.
that was submitted, but
So if it was CoStar, it means that at least the appellant has put it out there.
correct.
Okay.
And I believe that was all 2025 is when that all occurred. I see that the county board acted on it in September of 2025. So this was all post date of value.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Peralta, if you would take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, okay, focusing back on the summary page, we do see that the original assessment is understated when compared to the reconstruction using the agent's information and the actual reported actual income of the property. That NOI resulted in 2.2 million, whereas the original assessment's at closer to 2 million. And then we do reduce the assessment even more based on the excess vacancy. So with the new calculations, we do ask the board confirm the revised assessment at 18,499,900. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. So again, this property has been more than 50% vacant going back to the beginning of 2019. The owner has been trying to lease this up. They signed a new lease in 2024, as Mr. Peralta stated. We inspected it on 2 occasions. We saw they had built out spec suites. We saw that they had updated the amenities. They have a professional marketing team trying to market it. Any of the redevelopment information, I believe, was in 2025. So this vacancy is not a result of the owner. This is a result of the market. We have Arlington Economic Development putting out a report saying 51% of the market is in distress. And then we have Arlington County DREA saying it's because of the owners. It's the right hand not talking to the left hand. The county's put out a report saying it's distressed. This property is distressed. The assessment understates expenses. The revision understates expenses. The cap rate can use a bump to reflect the risk to the income stream presented by the vacancy. And then we ask that uniform concessions be applied to the rental rate as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Where are folks? Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, I agree with the appellant that the property's just not in a great location and it's been vacant for quite some time. I really don't think it has much to do with the redevelopment. So I did go ahead and do the cap rate bump on the revised account. That got me to 17,363,000 even.
And what did you change the cap rate to?
9.65.
Okay, other folks? I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Penrod.
I'm okay with the revised assessment the way it is. I think the county has used, pretty much the same numbers that the appellant is used, and even though they're saying, the vacancy is higher, but, they're using the same square footage to the calculation. And I think the revised number shows a, considerable deduction from last year. So I'm okay with it.
Mr. Hoffman, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I did the same thing as Johnny, but I had a slightly lower cap rate because I've always had an issue with this property being considered metro. I think that's part of the reason why the location is so, they struggle for office use because it's over a quarter mile to the nearest metro station. And I've measured it out a couple different ways. I'm trying to get a way that you would actually walk safely at a quarter mile, and I can't do it. So, my understanding of office market dynamics is if you're more than a quarter mile, you're not on metro. If you're half a mile, residential might work, and which is probably why they're trying to convert this, because people are generally more willing to live a half mile from metro if they live there versus their daily commute back and forth, wearing work clothes in the rain, all that stuff. So if I just change the cap rate to the non-metro cap rate, which is 9.4 instead of 9.15, I end up with pretty close to Johnny. I was at 17,916,300. And I think the only difference is just the difference between the two cap rates.
All right, Mr. Yates?
I didn't look at it the way Greg did in that, but I did look at the dropping at the 50 basis points, but at the same time, I did, with the idea of what even the new lease it signed was at $31 something, and it was a short-term lease. They probably took the space as is. They're just keeping a little income coming, and they knew they're redeveloping this. Yeah, I could confirm it, but I could also see the 50 basis points. I don't want to be in the middle deciding where are you, Mary?
I'm basically the same. I'm stuck in the middle. I probably lean a little bit more towards confirming.
Yeah, it's kind of where I
understand.
came.
Yeah.
It's kind of where I
It's so
came out
close.
to.
It is close.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a significant difference even, going to the 9.4. So I would probably lean more with Mr. Penaranda.
All right, so we have 3 confirmations.
All right, okay, Mr. Penaranda?
Sure, I move that we, has this been reduced?
Reduced to the county's number.
Yeah, we reduced the assessment to the revised number of 18,499,900.
Okay, I will second that. All in favor? Aye, opposed? This is unusual, but this is a 3-2 vote without Mr. Hoffman and without Mr. Mendez. But the county's revised number of 18,499,900 has been confirmed. And the last case on the agenda is RPC 1404113 at 3865 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes on this case.
Yes, thank you. If you'd be so kind as to direct your attention to page 43 of the PDF, you'll see our grounds for appeal. So this property sold on December 20th of last year for $25,700,000. So 11 days prior to the date of value, it sold in a widely marketed fair market value transaction for $25.7 million. Now that December 20th, 2024 sale is representative of the fair market for the subject property. According to Virginia law, a property for fair market value needs to be offered for sale by one who desires but is not obliged to sell it, and purchased by one who is under no necessity of having it. That's exactly what happened here. The subject property was brought to market by Cushman and Wakefield. Their marketing efforts included teasers sent to 2,500 qualified investors. This resulted in 109 confidentiality agreements being signed, 16 investor tours, 10 bids for the property. They then went back and did second round bids from the top 5 bidders. They then went back for a third round of bids, trying to get it as high as possible. And they got best and final offers from the top 3 second round bidders. That $25.7 million bid was the best offer they received. Now, this property at the time of sale was 71% leased. The majority of the leased in LA at the property is defense contractors. Mr. Peralta and I did inspect this property, I think last month, a few weeks ago. We saw that it's a good building. It's 71% occupied, defense contractors, sticky tenants. We saw some of the offices had DARPA breakout rooms, so it looks like there may be some co-location requirements. We saw some skiff space. So this property is, it was 71% occupied at the time of sale. As of the date of value, 71% occupied. And it sold December 20th, 2024 for $25.7 million. So in addition to inspecting the property, Mr. Peralta was also provided the leases for all the tenants in place. So he has all of the info that the market had. So, leases in place, walked the property, saw the quality of the building, and the assessment still came in, well above that sale price. That sale price, 25.7 million, is how the market valued it. That was 10 bids ultimately received for the property. After 3 rounds of bids, the best bid was 25.7 million. Just quote some more case law that the Supreme Court of Virginia has stated on multiple occasions that it is well settled that a recent sale of the subject property, while not conclusive in determining fair market value, is entitled to substantial weight. With that, we do request that the board reduce to that sale price. It was, again, right there on page 43, we've provided all of the details regarding that sale. Widely marketed. We provided the deed on the next page dated December 20th of last year. This property, again, we walked it. The leases have been provided to the county. It's a good property, and it's still sold for 25.7 million, which is about 175 a foot. This is where the market is. The current assessment is at 245 a foot. It's just overshooting it. We have an assessment that has a January 1 date of value. Then we have an actual fair market sale telling us what the value is at 25.7. There is 11 days of difference between those two values. This is where the market is. If there's any questions about the marketing process beyond what's provided in the packet, please let me know. But I don't really have much else to say other than this was a fair market value transaction. It's a good property. It's not distressed, and it's still coming in at 25.7 million. This is indicative that even though assessments may go down year over year, it's still not going down to where the market is. I don't really know of too many buildings in the county that could be better than this one. It's right at the county's 28% vacancy when it sold for that 25.7 million. It's got defense contractors, sticky tenants, skiff space, recently updated lobby. It's a good building, and it sold for 25.7. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Peralta for the county, please.
Yes, thank you. This property, 3865 Wilson. When looking at this property, we know that there were renovations done to the property. They refreshed and modernized the atrium lobby. And then there's a new tenant conference center and lounge on the property as well. Looking at the rent roll, neither two were indicated there as far as the square footage was concerned. That those new amenities weren't captured there in their most recent 2024 rent roll. Again, this property was being assessed in its original condition at 2002. And we know that those renovations were done upon inspection. So that would essentially change the effective age of the property. Knowing that that sale occurred in December of 2024, what the property owners did submit was an I&E of, I believe, as the appellant has stated, I guess about 11 days of income there in column E. So therefore, it was the department's objective to analyze the data and look at the rent roll and see that that income is only showing the 11 days. So a reconstruction had to happen for this property. So looking at the leases in place, we did use the appellant's per square foot rates at $37 a square feet. We did look at the vacant square footage at $36 a square feet because we know that looking at the leases in place, we did find an average of $41.70. We did see that there's a range that's being asked in CoStar of $36 to $43 a square feet. So the county is assuming on the lower end of that range at $36 a square feet, whereas the appellant is closer to $32.40, which I believe includes some type of concessions. But knowing and understand our methodology and how we value these properties, these office properties, you know that the vacancy at 28% reduces those rents by a significant amount. If you look that direct effect, we're reducing rents by about $1.5 million from the leases and the rents that are in place. So looking at this property, we really had to do a reconstruction. Looking at the prior years, on average, we did reconstruct the pass-throughs. We did look at the other income and the miscellaneous income and tried our best to reconstruct that to give a more accurate depiction of what the gross potential of this property could achieve. And knowing that there was about 7 new leases negotiated in this property. Now, I don't know exactly when these were negotiated. I do know that they didn't start or commence until 2024 for the majority. And that again is about 64,034 square feet of space that was leased since I believe since the sale of the property. Now, looking at what those average leases are for the new leases, we're at $41.70 for those leases. Again, the original assessment we did show at $41 a square feet. So we're somewhat accurate as far as what this property can achieve based on the rent roll that was submitted. Overall, looking at the county's test, we did test at the $10 a square feet, which was similar to what was reported in 2023, where we had a full year's worth of income. And you look back in 2022 and 2021, $10 seems to be what, could be stabilized for the expenses. So overall, we did come up with a value that was higher than original assessment. And we do ask that the board confirm the original assessment at $34,699,300, with the understanding that this property did undergo renovations. It did lease up 64,000 plus square feet. And the 2025 assessment represents a 17.67 decrease from last year's assessment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? No? Okay, Mr. Peralta, if you take a minute to wrap up then.
Yes, just to reiterate, we did keep the same rents when we tested the property. We looked at the 3-year averages for the past 3 years of full income. We did try to reconstruct the potential of this property based on the agent's $37 a square feet, and we came up with a value higher than original assessment. So we do ask the board confirm the original assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yes, thank you. So we didn't hear the county address the sale at all. Not at all. I mean, that's the elephant in the room is this property sold in a widely marketed fair market value sale 11 days prior to the date of value. Virginia law says where there has been a recent sale of the property, of course, such sale should be considered. What we heard from the county was, look at my models. I looked at the models. I got into the models, did this. I saw some 2025 leases on my September of 25 inspection. Those weren't there as of the date of value. This is where the market valued it at. 10 bidders came and looked at this property, had the same information that Mr. Peralta has, same leases, same inspection. They came to the conclusion that the highest value for this property was $25.7 million. That's what we request the board consider in accordance with Virginia law. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, it's just among the board. Where are folks? Mr. Hoffman?
I'd go with the sale price. And if you don't believe the sale, for some reason, there was another sale, I think 3 months earlier, right down the street on Wilson at 4075 for $148 a square foot. And that's a newer building. So I think Cushman actually did a good job scraping 10 bids together and getting it to 178. So I'd confirm at the sale number.
All right, Mr. Yates?
That's where I am too.
I agree as well.
It's a recorded deed, so I hopefully we can do it.
Okay, all right. Ready for a motion?
All right, I will motion to reduce the assessment to 25,700,000 based on the sale price.
Okay. and
Second.
a motion and a second by Mr. Yates. All in favor? Aye, opposed, none. Okay, the assessment is reduced to 25,700,000 even based on the sales price of December 20th, 2023.
Thank you all.
Okay. All right, that completes the agenda. So if anybody have any business? No? Okay, then we will stand adjourned here at 10:16. Mr. Hoffman has an appointment, so we're gonna let him scoot. The next meeting is Tuesday, next Tuesday, the 14th, 9 a.m. virtual for all the board members. Thank you.